Hi everyone, this is Dave. I hope things are going well. It is week 3, and we are about to start looking at the idea of proficiency in education. And you're about to start intensely working on learning maps and specific proficiencies, those concepts from Jim Knight's book. So before we get going, we've tossed the word around of mastery and proficiency in terms of helping students reach a level of proficiency or being able to master the standards. And the word proficiency is getting used in a lot of different ways. So part of this week is about giving you sort of a primer in how it's being used right now in Maine. When I've been using the word proficiency, like students becoming proficient in a standard, I mean, as many people do, master the standard, be able to know and do what's in the standard, that sort of thing. It's also being used by folks who are in this mass customized learning movement, which it's a sizable number of districts. And what they're doing is they're following a belief that the system of school right now is broken, that you can't have students in age-based grades, and the education system is not going to work if we keep giving them letter grades. That essentially students need to be able to learn at their own pace, learn things that interest them at their own pace, and move through school, leaving when they are proficient in all the standards. So philosophically, some schools are taking the position that they are getting rid of age-based grades, K1, 2, 3. They are getting rid of letter grades, A, B, C, and either just scoring students a 1 for start at a standard to a 4 highly super proficient, able to go beyond the target. Okay, so that movement is going on. Where that movement goes in Maine, we'll see. Not all schools are buying into this by any means. So that's going on one hand, and that's how some people are using the word proficient. The state adopted a strategic plan last year, and I've linked it in the course, which requires that all students graduating, I think as of 2017 or 18, demonstrate proficiency in the standards. How they do that is up to schools. It could be by a test, it could be portfolio, it could be a system like this mass customized learning movement. That movement's got a lot of cool possibilities. I was involved very early on in one school district and was very excited by the possibilities. It also has tons of very difficult to manage components. The idea that you could have a class of 25 students in front of you and each student is working on a different standard at a different level, doing different things. I currently work for a school system that does not believe this is a doable thing, and I left a school system that was starting this movement. I currently teach in a CTE program, a tech school, and we are standards-based. So, when folks connect standards to testing, I bristle a little bit. I'm responsible for teaching industry-based standards, very similar to Common Core. They're just focused in one content area. And my students have to demonstrate proficiency in those standards. When they don't get proficient, I keep teaching them and they keep practicing until they get there. At the end of the course, there's a test. Do I teach to the test? No. I teach really cool things and we do great, moving, challenging projects steadily. But if a student's getting an A in my course, they should be able to do pretty darn well on the test. And if they don't, if they're pulling A's in my course and they bomb the test, there's a conversation that happens between my supervisor and myself about why this is the case. And there's a lot of reasons why that could be the case, but that's just an issue. I think, I said at the start of the course that I believe in standards, and I do. I don't believe in teaching to the test. I don't believe in making school boring. But I do believe in students learning specific things, and students, families, community knowing what those things are going into a course. I can recall conversations with teachers who, one teacher said, I don't teach writing. I can't stand writing. I'm not good at it. It's not what I do. Well, wow. So students in her class now will not learn writing for a full year of high school English because a teacher doesn't like it. I've seen other teachers teach certain books not because the books were especially meaningful for the kids, because they were the books they liked back when they were in high school years ago. Some don't teach nonfiction. Some don't teach literature. I think that having standards, ideally they're agreed upon in a better way than the Common Core was put together, but having standards lets a student in one town leave high school, a student in another town or another state leave high school, and if they've truly graduated legitimately with passing or above passing things, their skill set should be roughly even. There might be some different experiences, but they should roughly be there. I also think standards are important because I've taught high school English for years, and I've had high school seniors graduating unable to get into the military while we're fighting 2 wars at once because of their reading skills. But they've always had a C or higher in English. They've never had, Fs. That's part of the reasoning behind proficiency-based learning, the mass customized movement, is that if a student's graduating high school but they've had Ds or even Cs, that means roughly 1/3 to 40% of the content they have not mastered. And that's significant. They make the argument that, you wouldn't hire or have a surgeon who only knows 60% of what's involved in your operation. You would want someone who's passed every test, met every bar, done everything. And I think it's a valid argument. I think the idea that we can pass students from grade to grade with a D, even a 75. Are we saying that it's okay they don't know 25% of the content? My own children just sort of roll their eyes when, it's report card time and I'm questioning, this final grade or an exam on a midterm. I'm like, you don't know 40% of what was taught? And, it's an argument. I think it's an argument worth talking about. So if you're thinking standards equal teaching to the test, I challenge that notion. I feel like standards have a component of equity, they have a component of accountability, and they also have a component of knowledge, of here's what you're going to do, here's what you're going to learn when you leave this course. And I think for families and students and community, that's very valid. It's sort of a protection measure. It's also sort of a here's what you're doing, here's why you're doing it, and society, or at least, the ruling branch of society, the Common Core, has said this is what we need. So you can certainly debate the Common Core, you can debate, so hopefully you will fight or challenge the issue of teaching to the test. And I think there's loads of things out there that are questionable. You can certainly challenge what standards are in standards, but I think, at least from my point of view, having standards is helpful in a lot of ways. So anyway, part of this week is you exploring the current use of the word proficiency and thinking about those things. The other part is kind of getting started on this big project and starting by developing a learning map that charts sort of what you're doing in your project. If you are redesigning a course or a semester or your teaching practice, whatever you choose, start off with a map. Think graphically, use arrows, have things coming in, have multiple branches. Figure out what standards are going to be key in this, which Common Core standards are going to be key. get those on that map so they're very visible. So students, parents, your colleagues in here can see what those are. And identify what, as Knight calls, the specific proficiencies are. And I just want to talk about those a little bit. There is some confusion what those are. Essentially, if you take a Common Core standard, the top line, write persuasive essay, and then the components, the A, B, C, D, that whole thing for a grade level. Let's say persuasive writing grade 7. And if you take that, look at that as an educator and figure out what are the things students need to do. They need to be able to know and do, things you have to teach probably, in order for them to do that standard. It's not just, here's the standard, kids, there it is, I put it at the top of the page, go write the essay. Each of these standards have a lot of components that students have to be able to do. So spend some time breaking them down, figuring out what it is a student has to be able to know and do, what you have to teach for a student to master them, and get those on there. And there's probably quite a few for each one. If you think about the very simple thing of, I think in one standard there's transition words. Well, if they have to use transition words in that standard, then you probably have to teach transition words. Or you probably have to at least reinforce what was taught if it was already introduced a previous year. So standards can't just be parked on a piece of paper and students go ahead and write away. You've got to spend some time, I think, breaking them down, figuring out what the specific proficiencies are, what students have to learn to do to master the standard. And that's a component. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to put up a small, short screencast walking you through one standard with just sort of my thoughts on it, much shorter than this. And I hope that'll be helpful. Any questions, please, of course, fire away. Thanks.